on that segue, we're going to bring in another expert. And I've been really, really excited to speak to this woman, too. This has been a really exciting show for me to do and prepare for. I've been really looking forward to it because it's two great topics, and two that are very close to my heart. I know the benefits of this, and we are going to have not only the expert, author, and advocate Shira Adler, who wrote the ABCs of CBD, but we're going to talk to her also about what she's doing, what's changing in America in regards to the understanding of the benefits of CBD oil and the benefits of CBD, the differences between THC and CBD, and just some history and insight. So without further ado, please welcome with me my second guest, Shira Adler, the author of the ABCs of CBD. Welcome, welcome, Shira. Thank you so much for coming on Unlimited Realities today.
Hi, Lisa. Good morning, and thank you so much, my dear goddess. It is such an honor to be on your show. I love what you do and really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and everyone who's listening.
Oh, it's so nice of you. It's so nice of you to come on it. I'm an equal fan of yours. So I love your book. I love the ABCs of CBD by Shira Adler, folks. You need to get it. You need to get it if you're a parent. You need to get it if you have parents. You need it. And I think this is such an incredible book. First of all, kudos for your bravery. I mean, we do live under Jeff Sessions in our federal government, and I really have to give you a tremendous amount of, high five, girl, on your bravery and being an advocate on a topic that's not always really well understood in our America as it should be. So let's start off with a little bit of history. I loved your history of cannabis, CBD. I guess actually it wasn't CBD then. It was more of the actual cannabis plant they were using. But even back 2,000 years ago, let's talk about the bang, or the sacred grass. That was one of 5 sacred plants in India used medicinally, naturally, and also as an offering to Shiva. I mean, we go back that far. Then we have George Washington. He encouraged everyone to grow it. And then somewhere around 1915 to 1927, we had that incredible non-medicinal use of cannabis prohibited, and soon after that, reefer madness.
Right.
Shira, let's talk about, where did we get so caught up in this? What happened?
It's such a beautiful and significant question. And right now in our current language, everybody is talking about this thing called CBD, and they often refer to it as CBDs, and they're using it as a catch-all word to describe both iterations, 2 different cultivars of the species. So there's one plant species, cannabis, but there are 2 different forms of it. There's the hemp side and the cannabis side. And right there, I hope that clarifies some of the most common and confusing questions. And yes,
Sure.
This plant species has been used by every faith and every tradition and every culture since the beginning of time, in all forms and in all dimensions and for all purposes, which is what's so magnificent, whether it's the agricultural perspective of how the United States was formed. We were very, very much a hemp-founded country. In fact, I like to say that George Washington and Thomas Jefferson were the original bud tenders. They really were. They required that all the United States farmers grew hemp as a crop. The USS Constitution, our old naval battleships, the rope and the fibers were used from hemp. But from a plant-based shamanistic perspective, women have been using cannabis and this herb for childbirth, for pain, for suffering, to making salves and balms, and it exists since the beginning of time. And then along come, no offense, gentlemen, the white men in suits back in the 1930s during the Great Depression.
Right.
It's in the book. There was massive unemployment, right? And what happens when we have times of political unrest and distrust, as we're seeing again now, there's a public resentment. People are looking for a scapegoat. They're looking for a group of people to identify and blame for the ills that are befalling them. And what happened is that was taken advantage of by the media mogul at the time, who had a lot of newspapers, and he was very, very invested in promoting timber as an industry and taking down hemp, because we all know the biggest sort of competitor for timber, for paper, would be hemp, right? So he started to play on people's fears, and they started to look at the Mexican immigrants back in the 30s as, quote, those people, a racially inferior group, an underclass society. In a way, it's so stark, and look at what's happening now. It's so eerily similar that we've gone back to it's history repeating itself. But in that time, we had the newspaper men saying, oh, that drug and those people, and that's where the word marijuana came from. It was associated with the name according to the Mexican immigrants. And in fact, it's a name that I try not to use because it really is just it was meant as a racial slur. And then we went from the 1930s and all of these people reading in the newspapers about those people and that drug, and we carried that energy and we carried the fear and that lower vibration all the way through into the 1970s, and that's when the Nixon era did the same thing. He tried to marginalize the hippies and the African American and the minorities that are still to this day being racially inappropriately treated because of the use of this natural plant-based medicine. And that's kind of the ugly side of where it started and what's been going on and what we're still trying to fight against in terms of the history and the perspective.
Yes, you've got, there's the piece of repeating history that's a little unsettling, because we have, although we've made tremendous, let's focus on the positives, because we have made tremendous strides in the legalization of both medicinal use and recreational use throughout the United States. But the medicinal use for marijuana comes in different forms. You touched a little bit upon hemp-based and cannabis-based CBD. Can you tell us the difference between hemp-based and cannabis-based?
Sure. So basically, again, looking at this plant species, there are two different forms of the plant, the cannabis side and the hemp side. And what's in the United States, we're still under something called the industrial hemp, what makes hemp legal for the purposes of the cannabinoids. And I want to make a distinction between, people are confused about, isn't hemp oil the same as CBD? So I should probably start with the definition. CBD is the name of one, it's short for cannabidiol. It's one of 120 plus chemical compounds that exist naturally in the plants, and they are called cannabinoids. And CBD and its counterpart, the psychoactive counterpart, would be THC. Those are the two most famous extraction points. That's what people really focus on. Both are used and both exist in the hemp and the cannabis. But in industrial hemp, in a hemp-based extracted CBD, one of the legal differentiators is that it has to have less than 0.3% THC. So if you're looking at, let's say, a full spectrum oil and it's coming out of hemp, it will automatically have to have less than 0.3%. That's how much those strains are allowed to carry, and that's really what they're genetically designed to do. They just don't have the same psychoactive level of THC. The THC in cannabis is over 0.3%. And that is what the ingredient that creates the psychoactive effect. So depending on where you live and your lifestyle and your comfort level, you might choose or opt to take cannabinoids from either the cannabis, if you're in Washington, Oregon, or Maine or Vermont, all the states that are now coming on board with legal programs. There might be a reason that you choose to do that. Or if you're in New York, which is where I live, you really do that unless you have a medical card. And you might just prefer to use the products that are hemp-derived CBD cannabinoids. And I think that it's a yes and conversation. There are reasons to do one or both, but you have to be mindful. You have to know your state laws. You have to know, unfortunately, the federal laws. And it's still really an industry that's in flux. Every week, it feels like there's a change. This state's coming on board. This one changes its program. This program isn't implemented yet. So the best thing that you can do as a spiritual being having a human experience is to get educated. Know what options you have. Understand the foundations of what makes this plant medicine so powerful. Make the right choice that resonates for you and for your family, but do so based on education, which personally I find sorely lacking in this industry. And that's what I'm out here to do. Talk to people, meet people, write a book, have conversations, explore this industry, and support each other. Ultimately, that's what it's about.
Right. Well, because it's such, it really is an everything kind of component, and it's something that helps on so many different levels, from arthritis to, cancer side effects to anxiety and everything in between. There's a lot of...
Right. It's beautiful. How many, and it's in the book, there's a whole section on just what does cannabis, or let's refer to it as a species, cannabis or hemp, what can it be used for? It's just mind-blowing. The fact is that if you are in a physical body, you need and should be taking cannabinoids. We are designed, literally physically designed in our human form and physical form to be taking in cannabinoids through what's called the endocannabinoid receptor system. And all mammals are wired with that system, which means it's why you start to see a lot of pet products, and a lot of people are discovering it's good for your animals, because we're all mammals and we are wired for it. So whether you are struggling with any kind of state of dis-ease, any challenge, any issue, the fact is cannabinoids, and CBD specifically, is highly anti-inflammatory, but it's non-psychoactive, which is why people are really more drawn to that than the THC, not just the stigma, but the fear of, and they don't want a psychoactive effect, but anti-inflammatory with no known side effects. The research is showing almost no problem with any of it for anybody. It also depends on the delivery method, which we can talk about, and no contraindications. That's really important. That means that the way this plant is designed, no matter what other meds you're on, and no judgment, we all have to make the choices that we feel resonate for us and our families. But you can be anyone with any kind of issue, and you can add CBD into your life and then slowly start to adjust and create a different sense of being and a different level of wellness and a vibrancy that you probably don't even know is possible yet. That's the beauty of it.
And is that because it receives, or it's connected with us through our own cannabinoids and our receptors within our own body? Because I know we have cannabinoids within our body, and is it because the connection between the plant and ourselves is received so well that there's no side effects or interferences with other medications?
Right. I mean, we should always be mindful, and I do encourage people to always trust your gut and muscle test and really, do the research and know which companies are good and safe and legal and doing things on a high level, because not a lot of companies are yet. The industry is new and there aren't really the standards that we'd like to see. But basically, yes. The way cannabinoids work, when you are putting them into your endocannabinoid system, the versions in the plants are phytocannabinoids, and what we create in our body and our system is the endocannabinoid receptor system. It's similar in how it works to, let's say, opiates. You know how opiates attach to the opiate receptors? And the problem is that the opiate receptors shut down your other systems. So you stop breathing. It's horrible. You die. It creates withdrawal. It's a very, very terrible problem we have in this country with opiate addiction. And yet cannabinoids do the opposite. So when you are sustaining and supporting the cannabinoid system, what happens is it creates homeostasis in your body, which means that in my family, for example, we take my tincture. We all use the 1,500 milligram, which is kind of a high-powered level tincture. And for me, it works on one kind of issue. And for my children, it allowed me to get them off of Western meds for anxiety and depression and PTSD completely. Now, it took me a while, but completely. They're off Western meds.
Wonderful.
And the dog had seizures, my rescue puppy. So we're taking the same product, all one bottle. But on each of us, it works very differently because it works on where our bodies need it and recognize it, and our brain chemistry adjusts to it. And it's simply allowing our own system to absorb what it's designed to absorb, to regulate itself, and our endocannabinoid system regulates all of our other systems. It doesn't shut them down. So that's why it doesn't have any contraindications, and you can't overdose, you can't die from this, no deaths ever from it. It's just remarkable. Can you think of any other, literally anything else in the world that you can say
No.
you can take with any medication, you can be with any kind of issue. It will support your body will know what to do with it, and it will adjust and create homeostasis itself.